You're listening to the Today's Eden podcast, episode 20. This is where the struggles are real, the callings are heavy, the kids are sticky. We come together because it takes a village, and this is your tribe. Today we are talking to Kristy, and she is a pre- and postnatal wellness expert and advocate, and she is the owner and founder of Pure Nuture, a business devoted to educating and inspiring women to nurture and nourish themselves through pregnancy, birth, and the postpartum period. Today we are talking about self-care and how incredibly important it is for all of us, but often it's the very last thing that we prioritize amid hectic schedules and busy lives, parents especially, which is so backwards. We need to practice self-care for our children and our physical and mental well-being. Kristy recently published a book called Pure Nuture and is inspired to dedicate her work to supporting women who are pregnant or trying to get pregnant, as well as mothers of newborns. And she feels a calling to support women during this unique and special time, not only to feel their best, but also to potentially prevent postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. So I'm so excited for you to meet her and listen to all her great wisdom that she has to share. Let's get to the episode with Kristy. Hey guys, this is Kristy that I have on the podcast today, and I'm super excited to have her because I read her book, Pure Nuture, and I found it really, really helpful and just a super special book. So I wanted to have her on to talk a little bit about that. But first, you had a master's in education, I read.
That's right. I used to teach English as a second language. And so I got my master's degree in multicultural education.
Oh, wow. So what made you switch gears from education to health coaching and especially the prenatal care for women?
It's kind of a windy road. And it all started, it all started in college. I ended up having an eating disorder. And so that kind of catapulted me into the realm of nutrition and food, and I was using it in an unhealthy way. But then to heal from that, I started learning about nutrition as nourishment and mindful eating and all the other aspects of food that I wasn't looking at. Like I was looking at only number of calories and number of fat grams, and then I learned that there's just so much more to eating. And so I healed my relationship with food. And then a few years after that, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And so I actually moved back home. I'm from Pittsburgh. And I moved back home to be with him as he was going through his treatment. And I saw kind of what was lacking in the healthcare system. Yeah. You know, they go in, it's drugs, it's surgery, it's chemo. But nobody was talking to him about what he was eating and how much water he was drinking and all of these other aspects of health that I saw that was lacking. And so that took my interest not only in nutrition and my own personal experience, but it took it to a whole nother level of healing and well-being. So that's when I decided to go back to school and get my certification as a holistic health coach. And so I worked I created my own business. I had my own practice. I worked with private clients and taught workshops. And as I was doing that for about 5 years, I ended up getting pregnant and starting a family. And through my pregnancy, I became extremely interested in, what I was eating and how I was eating and how I was living, not only for myself, but for my growing baby. And so I started kind of just noticing that interest and just feeling that through. And then 2 years later, I got pregnant with my second daughter. And that's when kind of everything blossomed and opened up. And I thought, this is the area that I really feel most passionate about. And so I went back to school and got a specific certification as a prenatal health coach. And then amongst all of that, even before my dad got sick, I found yoga. And so I've been practicing yoga and teaching yoga for quite some time. And so at that same time as going back for prenatal health coaching, I went back and got a specific certification as a prenatal yoga teacher as well. So yeah, over the last few years, I've been dedicating my work and my life to supporting women during their pregnancy journey.
Yeah, and it's so neat because I feel like there's a sort of trend with those who have struggled with an eating disorder to where most of the time they either end up being, certified, like you said, to do like nutrition or in your case, holistic health. And so I find that kind of interesting that we have like such a desire to take something that we struggled with and to use that to to help others not do the same or to be able to come out of that same struggle. And I just think that's really, really cool.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, no matter what that struggle is, I feel like typically that's how we end up doing the work in our lives is supporting women or supporting people in general, no matter what it is,
Right.
with something that we've struggled with.
Yeah. I love how in your book, Nurture, which we'll talk more about, but you said your story and your pregnancy are solely yours. And I love that, like, just that one sentence is so powerful because, when you're pregnant, everybody is tossing you a ton of information and you feel like you have to live up to others' expectations and you're not even sure what you're doing and all these things. And so I'm curious, when throughout your pregnancies, was there anything in particular that kind of sparked that passion besides having a baby and already having that interest in nutrition, or was there something else? Or
Yeah, both of my pregnancies were similar in so many ways and different in so many ways. And one of the biggest things that sparked this interest is because of my relationship with food and because of my interest in eating for nourishment and in eating to feel good and have energy. I was really I was eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, and so as it took me a while, it took me almost a year to get pregnant. So as I was in that process of planning on pregnancy, and I was really interested in eating healthy, and I just couldn't wait because I couldn't wait to be eating healthy for me and my baby. And the minute I saw those two lines on that little stick, I was like, oh, I can't even imagine eating a vegetable. And all I want to do is lay down. And I mean, I laid down most of the time. The
mm-hmm.
only thing I could think of eating there were two things that I really wanted all the time: chicken sandwich from Burger King and donuts, which I don't even eat donuts. Like, I don't really like donuts. And all I wanted during my pregnancy was donuts. And I thought, at first I was making myself wrong. I'm like, oh, I should be eating healthy. And so it was that whole process of, kind of I had set myself up to this ideal of like what I was going to do and how I was going to be when I was pregnant. And then I realized, you know what? I can't. Like, I really can't. And so that it made me realize how much I want to support women, now looking back, how much I want to support women and just being okay with what is and honoring what's happening to their bodies and honoring how they're feeling, and, knowing that their pregnancy is unique to them. And even though there are similarities, it is going to be solely theirs, and that one, and it's very unique. And so really just tuning in with what your body needs and trying to do the best that you can to support yourself, and then be kind and gentle with yourself when you're thinking, I should be eating an organic salad right now, and all I want to do is go find the nearest Burger King. And so so that was one of the biggest things I realized. I kind of was taking self-care and being healthy to an unhealthy level in my
Mm-hmm.
first pregnancy. And I was making myself wrong so much of the time. I wanted to get to yoga classes and I wanted to do this and that and the other thing. And then I realized that, it's not always possible. And so if, having these standards or these ideals, sometimes you're not able to do it. And then what are you going to do with that? Like, how are you going to, come to a place of ease and being kind and gentle with yourself when you're not doing what your brain, you can't do what your mind and your brain is telling you what you think you should be doing. And so I think with going through my pregnancy and seeing a bunch of my friends going through their pregnancies, I realized that that's a really huge need. Like, we really want to lift women up and help them to give them permission to be okay with what is and to be gentle and kind with themselves and practice self-care, and whatever that is. So self-care looks different for everybody. And so what is helping women to tune in with what is self-care for me?
Yeah. Yeah, and I kind of wanted to talk about that. So I kind of wanted to demyth what self-care is, because you talk about that throughout your book, and it's a huge theme. And I know it's different for everyone when you say self-care, what they translate that as. But I feel like when people think of self-care, they think of getting their nails done, or they think of going to the spa. But what is self-care really? And what simple ways can we do forms of self-care pre and post pregnancy?
Yeah, I think, self-care can sometimes, I think it sometimes can even put a bad taste in people's mouths, like, oh, that, self-care, it seems selfish.
Mm-hmm.
Or, oh, self-care is like a weekend away at the spa. It's really not. It really is. I think of it as a way to bring yourself back into balance, or a way to fill yourself up so that you have more to give, especially as a mom and a mom to be. We are putting out so much energy. We're constantly moving and thinking and planning and driving around and cleaning up, and it's just constant. And so what are some ways that you can fill yourself up to have a little bit more energy to keep going? And that's where the different types of self-care, come into play. And so for a woman, deciding on, first of all, that self-care doesn't just mean a trip to the spa or a manicure. It could mean literally to sit down for 5 minutes and have a glass of water, like something that simple. It could be, it can be 5 minutes out of your day, or it can be a weekend away. It can be, what you're eating and making a decision to, eat something, maybe you're craving, whatever you're craving. And then maybe you eat something that's not as healthy, but then you get something else and you eat that first before you eat something that's going to maybe give you a spike, but then make you crash later. So it's like managing your energy, managing the balance of the hormones in your body. Really, it's coming from, we live in a society of fight or flight. We're always going. And so when I think of self-care, I think about it bringing you back into a rest and digest mode, the more of a relaxed state of being, so that you are, kind of dealing with your life from a more calm and grounded place. And so whatever that is, it could be just going outside and just taking in a deep breath of fresh air, being outside. It could be watering your plants. It could be going for a walk. For me, it's going to a yoga class. I love practicing yoga. I think I could do it at home, and I can never do it at home. And so I literally have to get myself out of my house and go to a class. And that's just not really possible every day. But that's my form of self-care. And then it might be a warm bath for somebody else. It's going to a coffee shop and sitting at a coffee shop maybe for 20 minutes and reading a magazine. It can be anything that is going to help you just feel a little bit better, or help you give you a little bit more energy.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to ask you next was, how did you implement self-care throughout your pregnancy? And then, was yoga one that you did while you were pregnant, or is that one that you do now, or that you lean more towards now that you have little ones running around?
I practiced a lot more yoga when I was pregnant. It was my go-to support system for just keeping me feeling calm and balanced. I had been practicing for about 8 years. I'd been practicing heated power vinyasa yoga. Oh, yeah. And I loved it. I loved the movement. I used to be a dancer. So that transitioning from dancing into a vinyasa form of yoga, where it's just flowing from pose to pose, really felt good in my body. And so I had a lot of friends that kept doing that type of yoga when they were pregnant. And I thought, I can do that. And I tried to do it and it didn't feel good. Once I got pregnant, like in the fourth, fifth month of pregnancy, it didn't feel good. And so that was kind of another form of self-care, is to honor, my head was telling me, this is the style you always have done. This is what you love. But then my body was telling me something different. So honoring that. And so I tried my first prenatal yoga class, and it just soothed me. It was so supportive emotionally, physically, mentally, just everything. Spiritually, I just really felt supported in that style and that practice. And being surrounded among other pregnant women just gave me that sense of community. So that was my biggest way of practicing self-care. And now getting to a yoga class as a mom is just more challenging.
Yeah.
It's finding, and then also working and it's just finding that time, because I just can't go. I have to make sure that the girls are taken care of and somebody's with them, and when is the class and the schedule. And so it's a little more challenging now, but I know it's definitely helpful. And in fact, like if I start to get a little bit agitated or snippy, my husband will ask me if I've been to a yoga class lately. He's like, I think you need to go to yoga.
I love you, but you need to go to yoga now.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, and the hard thing about yoga classes, which I understand why it's this way, but I wish that there was a better way, is that most yoga classes don't have like a form of childcare like other gyms have. And so it's so frustrating. But
it is.
But yeah, I was in the same position actually, except I used to be really into like hit workouts, and I just felt like, I guess, that, just achieving so much that it was like bringing me outside of like my mom mode and into my like self-care zone, where it was fueling me and it made me feel good. And then I realized that my body did not like that very much. And so, I wasn't feeling very good, and then I realized I wasn't really looking forward to going to the gym. And then I would also try vinyasa yoga because I got that sweat and sort of a similar satisfaction. And then I realized that was kind of making me feel the same way, but I like loathed doing any slow yoga because I feel like, because we are trained to like do that go, go, go thing, that it forced me to slow down. And I really hated it. And so I had to fight against that. And it took me like a few classes to find, okay, this, like, I might not like this form of slow yoga, but hey, like I could really do this one. And, and then after a few times and finding the right instructor that I liked, it actually has been something that I really enjoy. And like you said, there's just something about the slower yoga that is relaxing and, kind of comforting. And yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but I just thought it related.
Yeah, no, and it's true. And I think you made a good point too about there's so many different instructors and styles and sequences and different, even studios. And I think, for someone, if they're just trying yoga for the first time and they go into a class and they feel like, oh, I don't like this, to not give up on it, because it might have just been that one, maybe that wasn't a right fit for that person. So then I think trying 3 or 4 different places and styles and classes and instructors is really helpful to find, just like with self-care, like what works for you, what helps you feel supported and at your best. And sometimes it takes time to figure out what that is.
Yeah. And I know you created this book to support women, like new moms, but where had you wished that you had more support or guidance during your own pregnancy?
I think the biggest thing for me, where looking back at just the whole journey into motherhood, is the postpartum period. Really, I mean, I felt like I felt pretty supported during my pregnancy, just with friends and with family and all of those different aspects. But where I felt like I could have used a lot more support was right after I brought my girls home. I really felt like I just I wanted to be like, all of a sudden I was in charge of this little person and I had to know all the answers and figure out what to do. And breastfeeding was really hard at first. And, and all these things that happen to your body that nobody tells you about. And, there's just so much. And I was like, I just want my mom. Like I wanted to be mothered as well. And
Mm.
I think that that is so key. And, for postpartum is to mother the new mom. I
Mm.
wish that my mom came down and she helped. And one of the ways that she helped, which was amazing, was cooking and
Yeah.
just having food. Oh, it's just thinking back, to like, all the times as a kid, you had your meals prepared for you. And so to come downstairs and have breakfast laid out for me was the best.
Hmm.
And so I think having someone to like just to not have to think about what you're going to eat and have somebody prepare your food for you and somebody to help with even just holding the baby for a little bit. Like sometimes you just want to lay down and take a nap and know that somebody's either holding your baby or watching your baby sleep while you're sleeping. That I remember when I brought my daughter home for the very first time and I put her in her little bassinet to go to sleep at night, and I laid in my bed and had her next to the bed, and I looked at her and I'm like, how am I ever going to sleep ever again? I just couldn't even imagine taking my eyes off of her.
Yeah.
And so just to have somebody there to help with the baby and just support the mom with food and sleep. And I wish I had a little bit more of that. And in fact, the second time around, I actually developed postpartum depression after my first pregnancy. And so with the second pregnancy, I looked back and I said, what was missing? What was lacking? And I had heard about postpartum doulas, which I didn't know what that was. And
Hmm.
so I started doing some research and I ended up hiring a postpartum doula after my second pregnancy. And that was aside from my birth doula, the birth doula and the postpartum doula, I feel like that was the best money I could have spent. It just
Yeah.
really made all the difference in the world.
And it's so hard. I feel like when you said a postpartum doula, I didn't even know that, like, I didn't, like, that's the first time that I've heard about that. And so those are things that I feel like when you get pregnant, they should give you like a list of, okay, after you have a baby, you're going to feel all sorts of emotions. It could be possible that you don't understand them or that you can't control them or that you're, overwhelmed. Here's a list of people, like, if you feel those, these are the people you can contact or whatever. And especially because you just like you said, you're not prepared for those things. Like when you get I
Hmm.
remember the first time coming home, like I thought I kind of knew my stomach wasn't going to be the way, but when
Yeah.
you look down, you're like, this is not my body. Like,
Hmm.
or just like the nursing thing, everybody tells you, oh, like it's as simple as two choices. You either bottle feed or you breastfeed. And so you assume that if you choose to breastfeed, it's just going to happen. And that's not
Yeah.
always the way that it is. So you already have those expectations. And then when you can't do it or when it's hard, you immediately go to that, like, what's wrong with me? Or why can't I do this? And there's just a lot of things, but I love that there are other women who are realizing that they can be that support in those times, like
Hmm.
a postpartum doula. Like, wow, I'm so thankful for somebody who feels a calling to do that for somebody else because
Yes.
we definitely need that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's an incredible service to new moms. It really is. And I see more and more women going into that field,
Mm-hmm.
especially now that I'm in kind of the pregnancy field now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to become more aware of, all of the services that are out there. And I think more and more women are choosing to go into that type of career as a doula or a postpartum doula. And it's so supportive.
Did that lessen the length of time that you struggled your second time around, or was that more of like a precaution and it didn't happen the second time around, or?
Yeah, I did it as prevention and I did not have postpartum depression the
Mm,
second time.
that's
Hmm.
awesome.
Yeah.
So was there a way that you kind of got out of that slump the first time around, or was it just kind of a muddle your way through it kind of thing?
Yeah. So the interesting thing is I thought that postpartum depression happened right after you had the baby.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that that was the only way that it happened. Like you give birth, you come home, and then your hormones start to go crazy because you're not pregnant anymore, and then you develop postpartum depression. And so that didn't happen. It actually came on very, very slowly. And I wasn't diagnosed until my daughter was 10 months old.
Mm.
And I didn't know that I had postpartum depression. I just was thought that I was just, I was having some weird thoughts and, and just feeling a little bit low energy, feeling like having a lot of crying spells. But I don't know. I just didn't realize what was happening. I just thought it was just because I was a new mom and this was a new chapter in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually was going to see a therapist, and the reason I started going to therapy when I was pregnant because I thought I want to be the best mom that I can be.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make sure that I'm as whole and complete as I can be, and dealing with my things as I'm moving into motherhood. So I had been going to see a therapist, from kind of mid-pregnancy on, and she was the one that said, I think that you're struggling with postpartum depression. And I said, no, I really don't think so. And she recommended I go see a specialist, and I went, and and then I did this test that they have, this, kind of this questionnaire,
Mm-hmm.
and it was off the charts. And so yeah, that was how I found out. And the one thing that I think kind of pushed my postpartum, maybe it was like it was, maybe it wouldn't have been postpartum depression, but dealing with a little bit of kind of the mood imbalance.
Mm-hmm.
But what pushed me over the edge was when I started weaning from breastfeeding, which was around 10 months.
Mm.
And so I think that that's something, that I think, women, it's important for women to be aware that that can happen, that it isn't right after pregnancy, not necessarily, and that it can happen because when you stop breastfeeding, there's another hormone shift. And I know, like, when we breastfeed, oxytocin is released. And so when you stop getting that surge of feel-good hormones every time you breastfeed, that can also have an impact on your body.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't either.
As
I
if
did
we
not
don't,
either.
as if we don't have enough hormones already. Like,
I know.
I'm just like, yeah. And that's funny that you say that though, because even for me, I don't think I had like the same thing happen to the same degree, but just the weaning process in itself, I feel like when you're nursing, it's so bonding and it's so like your sweet time together, and it's the only time that they're still, and
Mm-hmm.
so then when that time stops, it's kind of like you're sad and you kind of have to mourn that, like, okay, like this is a good thing, but like we're moving on to where it's like a
Yeah.
realization that they're not little, they're growing, and that the connection between you and them is changing. And so, holy cow, yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
This book, when I was reading it, I was thinking that these are like amazing tips for things that we need to be thinking about pre-pregnancy, during pregnancy, and post-pregnancy. But even longer than that, like like if you create these habits when you're pregnant, that's great, and your baby is definitely going to benefit from that. But then even past that, I feel like once you create the habit, like it's going to benefit yourself for a longer, for the long run. And I feel like that is such a great thing because we don't do a lot of these things. Like you talk about the self-care, mindfulness when you're eating, and like you said, it's kind of finding that balance of, like it's okay to eat the chicken sandwich, but like try to first, eat like nutrient dense foods. But if you eat the chicken sandwich, like who cares? Like don't stress yourself out about it. Do what you can, and feel good about it.
Right. Yeah, I had some friends read the book that, they either don't have kids yet or their kids are grown, and it's been years since they've been pregnant, and they said, you wrote this book for pregnant women, but all of these tips, like anybody can use these tips.
Mm-hmm.
They're all like really, it's all really useful information
Yeah.
for feeling your best.
Yeah.
And it's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's great that you have like actual examples of yoga poses in there. You have pages where you can write notes, which is awesome. And so I also wanted to talk about Pure Nuture is not only a book, but it's also, you have services that go along with that. What are things that you help women with, like when they book a service through you, and who is it kind of for?
So, right now, the biggest thing is prenatal yoga. So I teach prenatal yoga classes. I also do private and semi-private yoga classes. And then I teach specific workshops. I teach prenatal workshops. I teach postnatal workshops specifically for the moms.
Mm-hmm.
And then I teach mommy and me yoga classes where that's where you can bring your baby with you and incorporate your baby in with the you in your yoga postures and the yoga practice. And then I also teach other workshops. I teach a nutrition workshop for pregnancy. I teach kind of a self-care workshop, which is specifically related to making that transition from pregnancy into motherhood and exactly what we've been talking about, creating these self-care tips and habits, and then how to incorporate that in that, once you have a baby and you're caring for the baby so much, how do you still care for yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And one last workshop that I teach is just pregnancy in general, what to expect, the different phases of pregnancy, and then how to best support yourself throughout your pregnancy from a holistic point of view. And so that's the kind of the crux of Pure Nurture. Those are the biggest aspects of it. And then, in development is what I'm starting to develop is more of the community aspect of Pure Nurture. Mm-hmm. So I recently incorporated a community new moms or moms to be meetup right before our yoga class. So women will come in 30 minutes prior to the yoga class, and we will just sit around and just talk and support each other with what's going on in our pregnancy. Because I think community and having that your pregnancy tribe, I think that's really important to have. People you can talk to and say, hey, this is going on. Did this happen to you? Or if this happened to you, what did you do? Or any recommendations for like a good massage therapist, or who do you know that can help with this? Or and just being able to talk through all of those things, knowing that you're not alone, and then having support around different things that are going on with you throughout the pregnancy.
Yeah. Did you have, when you were pregnant, like a really good pregnancy tribe around you?
It's funny because 3 or 4 of my really good friends, we all got pregnant within 1 month of each other.
Oh, wow.
And it was not planned. I mean, a couple of them, actually 2 of them were completely surprise pregnancies, and we all gave birth within 1 month. So we got to go through our pregnancies together. And that was the first time I was pregnant. And then the second time, it was really just, I think it really just was my prenatal yoga class. Even if I didn't talk to anyone during the class, it would be, leaving the class and we would go out into the lobby and kind of chit chat for a little bit. And I really got a lot out of that.
Yeah. I feel like we need that kind of adult interaction, or that, like you said, that kind of like tribe to connect with people, to relate, or just to help you with advice or referrals to different places, or to just make sure that everything that you're feeling is normal and,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that you're not alone.
Yeah. So what would your top 5 tips be for postpartum care?
I think the biggest thing is prevention. So a lot of what we had been talking about previously, starting the self-care early, figuring out what is self-care to you. What does that mean to you? What's going to support you, and figuring that out in pregnancy so that you have those tools to carry over into postpartum and as a new mom. Because you're not even thinking about that as you're a new mom. I mean, you're really thinking about your baby so much of the time. So if you have self-care, you have self-care already built into your lifestyle, then it's not even a question. Yeah. It's just what you do. And so trying to get that, kind of get that established during your pregnancy. And I think the second biggest thing would be nutrition, and just really eating eating not only for nutrient density, meaning, eating really good quality foods that are going to support you and your growing baby. And then when you're breastfeeding, it's the same thing, like your all of the things that you're eating are going in to create the breast milk. And so nutrients are being passed to the baby that way as well. And then if you're having, if you do crave an, ice cream or chicken sandwich or a donut, when you do crave it, honor the craving, enjoy it, and then not make yourself wrong for it. There's all the stress hormones about what you're eating can affect you just as much as what you're eating. So when I just feel like when working with clients and women, just if you really crave something, have it, enjoy it, and don't make yourself wrong, and then move on,
Yeah.
and then choose something healthy after, or have a big glass of water later, and just really loving yourself in that way. Water, drinking a lot of water, and um, when you're pregnant, that's so important. And also when postnatal, it's really important to drink a lot of water. It just helps with your energy, with fatigue. It helps with digestion and elimination, kind of getting your body going again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Community, the pregnancy tribe, like that's just having people around you, your family, friends, going to yoga classes or a meetup group, or, even they have play groups that you can find play groups, and they're not even, the babies just lay on the floor, or you breastfeed the whole time. It's really not a quote play
Right.
group. It's really just a chance for moms to bring their babies and get together and chat, and so, but what's fun is if you develop that play group early on, you watch the babies grow, and then you could be in that same play group with your 4 and 5 year olds running around, and, remembering back to when they were just little itty bitty infants. And sleep. I think this is like the most common advice ever that people give women that have just had a baby, is to sleep when your baby sleeps. And that can be so hard. But I think sleep is like, it's like one of the biggest nutrients that we can give our bodies, and give ourselves, because when we don't have enough sleep, it can affect our mood, pretty drastically can affect our mood, and just feeling tired, having enough energy to do all of the things that you need to do. Sleep is just essential. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think those would be like my top tips.
Yeah, I think the sleep thing is super important and also super hard. Like
It
when
is.
you have the first one, I feel like I had no problem with our first sleeping when she slept. She was still my daughter was still taking 2 naps during the day, and then my newborn, was sleeping like all the time. So at one point, I would get like at least 1 or 2 naps in the day, and then as my oldest daughter, grew, it would get down to 1 nap, and then it was like, okay, I just have that one chance, and then and then she wouldn't nap, and then then it was just like, okay.
It's hard. It is. I know. I used to say with my first daughter, I was like, she's not allowed to watch TV. We're not watching TV. We're going to just, try to avoid TV at all costs. Um, and then when it came to like naps and, trying to manage both, I would just be like, don't you just want to watch some TV? I just put the TV on. And she was like this little 2.5 year old toddler running around. She could care less about TV and didn't want to sit down. That was really hard. But I remember thinking like, oh, let me see if I can use TV to keep her busy, so I can just, even if I don't sleep, I can just lay down for a minute.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I used to feel a little bit guilty about that too, because with my pregnancies, I had hyperemesis. It's like where you are just like extremely nauseous the entire time, and it's just awful. Yeah, so like not being able to just get up and run around, it's like, oh, let's sit together on the couch and watch this show, and you
Hmm.
feel guilty, but then my husband or he likes to remind me that this is only like a season. They're not going to, remember their whole life as sitting in front of the television. They're just going to know, that mommy didn't feel good, and, just to kind
Hmm.
of not get down on yourself about what you thought pregnancy or motherhood would be like when it does like kind of take a turn, and, just to accept that things change and that the stages change, and that, yeah, that you're kind of just going to have to go with the flow.
That's so true. Just with
Yes.
everything, you could apply that to absolutely everything.
Yeah, which is really hard for type A people like me. I
Hmm.
learned to let go of that real fast.
Hmm. It is. It's still a struggle for me. It's
Yeah.
always.
Well, I just want to acknowledge you that for one, it wasn't even planned, and I had no idea that you had struggled with postpartum depression. But I am so grateful that you talked about it, and just bringing up, the fact that you went to therapy, because, so many of us go through it, and there are a lot of negative feelings about it because it used to not be talked about a lot. And so I'm really grateful that you talked about basically to ask for help, to be like, I want to figure this stuff out to be better for those around me. And just for your, mental wellness, I think is important in general. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, because I feel like, if somebody's listening that has gone through the same thing, then that's just one more person to help them feel a little less alone, in those struggles. And also just for creating this book, which is super helpful. And it doesn't put any expectations on you like a lot of, I think that other pregnancy books can do it unintentionally, but just to where it's, this is just a really positive book throughout, and just kind of like a hug.
Yeah.
Like,
that was my biggest goal. I mean, and that's what I was looking for, because all these pregnancy books tell you, what you shouldn't do and what could go wrong, and and it was just, it felt so heavy. And I was like, why? We need, like, pregnancy, we're so inundated with all this information, and pregnancy is such a new time, and it's up and down, and I wanted to write a book that was affirmative, coming from, just a positive, all the things that are going to support you, and just be inspiring and not overwhelming, just short and sweet. And so, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted it to be like, reading it would feel like, just sitting down with a good friend and just chatting, nothing heavy, nothing negative, no shoulds, no judgments, just do what, talk about what works best, figure out what works best for you, and leave the rest.
Yeah, I feel like that has definitely been portrayed. So congrats to you.
Thank you.
I don't, this is a random side note, but there is a Netflix, I guess it's on Netflix, but it's a documentary about postpartum depression, and I haven't watched it yet, but I've watched the trailer, and it's called When the Bough Breaks. I don't know if you've heard about that, but
I haven't.
yeah, so it's like, I saw the trailer and it looks super powerful, and it's basically about, it follows this one mom and her, basically her journey through postpartum depression from like birth, like from when the moment she brings home the baby and like all this stuff. And it's just really crazy. And I think there's like a few celebrities that, pop up that like kind of talk about basically, how they realize they have it or whatever. Anyways, I just wanted to put that out there because it's sort of aligns with the topic, but
definitely.
Yeah, so
I'll have to check that out. Yeah.
You should have some tissues nearby, because just watching the trailer alone, I was like, whoa.
Wow. Yeah.
But so I want to ask you a few questions before we end our chat. What is the most influential book that you've read?
So, pregnancy related, I loved Magical Beginnings, Enchanted Lives by Deepak Chopra. I found it to be so really holistic, and just kind of looking at all aspects of pregnancy. And then, he incorporated all of my favorite things: yoga, meditation, Ayurveda, nutrition. So that, for me, that was, that really influenced my pregnancies and just my life in general. But non-pregnancy related, definitely The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. I've read it a few times, and I think it's also a very short book, but it is so powerful, and it really influenced just kind of how I, handled different relationships and just myself in life. I think it's a really great book.
Those sound like great reads. I have like an ongoing Amazon list that I keep after every interview. I'm like adding more to it, and I can't keep up. If you could empower women in one way, what would it be?
That was that's a hard one, because I want to, empower women in so many ways.
If you have more than, like, if you have a top three, then,
Yeah. No, I would say the biggest one, the one that stands out the most to me, is a lot of what we talked about today is, empowering women to listen to their intuition, especially as a mom and mom to be, listening to their mama bear wisdom. I feel like we're living in an age of just information overload, and I think there's really few times in one's life than in pregnancy and motherhood where you get a lot of shoulds and shouldn'ts, and people telling you what they did and what you should do and how to do things. And I mean, it really can be overwhelming. And so really tuning into, what I know that worked for you, but let me figure out what worked best for me. And then you'll get a lot of advice that yeah, this is amazing. I want to incorporate this. and then leaving what doesn't work for you, but having that ability to tune in, empowering women to tune into their intuition and tune into their gut and their heart to what's going to work best for me, what's going to work best for my family, what's their truth. And I think that can be hard to do. And I think sometimes we have to retrain ourselves to be able to tune into our intuition. And I really struggle with that, because one of my biggest things is like kind of worrying about what people are going to think, worrying about other people's feelings, and wanting to kind of just make sure everybody's okay. And then not really honoring what is going to be best for me, what is going to be best for my family. And so a couple of the ways that I've been learning over the last few years of really figuring that out is just breathing into it. So if I think about something, if I'm trying to figure out what to do, if I breathe in and it feels like a full relaxed breath, then I feel like, okay, that's probably going to be something that's going to work for me. But if I breathe in and it feels constricted and a little tight, then I think maybe that's not something that's going to work for me. And just chatting with a trusted friend, or even journaling. That's why I talk a lot about journaling in the book, and offer the journal pages in the book, because I think there's something about getting our thoughts down through our hand, through pen and onto paper, that can help us gain a lot of clarity. And so, yeah, empowering women to gain clarity in what is going to be best for them, what is going to be best for their family, and honoring that despite what's outside, what outside people or things or society is telling them.
And with Facebook, that's so hard.
Yeah,
I've learned
exactly.
what not to put out there anymore, like what I don't want answers to from a million people. So, yeah, that's really great. And then if you could tell your younger self one thing, assuming that she would listen, what would it be?
To worry less about what others think, and to do what you feel is best for you. So it kind of goes hand in hand with my empowering women, empowering myself, right? And empowering myself as a young person to just do what feels best for you, and just let go of that fear of being judged, and to be your own advocate and cheerleader. And if somebody does something that upsets you or hurts you, to not take it on as truth and to carry it with you for years, but to just learn to just breathe that out and let it go, and just release it. And I think, this kind of what that advice I'd want to give to my younger self has just started to become even more clear as I've become a mom, because then I'm just so much more aware of what I would say to my daughters, and the lessons I want to teach to my daughters. And so it's something, I would want to tell my younger self to worry less about what others think. And I would love to be able to teach that to my daughters too. And, hopefully, assuming that they'll listen, and hopefully they'll get that,
Yeah, well, I think, and like they say, is that they get more from what we example than what we say. And so I feel like as we are learning to do those things for ourselves, that it will show through, like in our parenting, and just as they watch us grow with them, like they're going to see that, oh, like mom didn't care that, this happened or whatever, that lady said this or that, and so, they kind of learn from that. And so I feel like just growing and doing things for ourselves is even self-care. Like now that I think about it, even if they watch us growing up, like, hey, mom always took a minute to have her morning coffee before I woke up for school. Like, why did she do that? And then, eventually they're going to ask you that question, and then that's something that they're going to remember, and that they're going to, I would assume, probably end up repeating as they get older, and so yeah, I think that's awesome. And I think that just played out in my head as like a ripple effect, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So how can people follow you? How can we keep in touch with what you're doing? Where can we find you?
So I'm on purenuture.com, and also on Instagram, pure_nurture. And I also have Facebook and Twitter. I don't use Twitter that much, but Instagram's where I'm at most of the time. I really love Instagram. So yeah, and then I'm starting a blog, and so that's kind of just getting started, and that's at purenuture.com as well.
Hey, you guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I am so excited to hit our 20th episode. Thank you so much for being a listener, a subscriber, and for all the reviews that you've posted. I am so grateful. Make sure you check out the show notes for this episode at todayseden.com/podcasts. PODCASTS. And also, I am proud to announce that we now have a Facebook group. It is called the Today's Eden Tribe, and you can find it on Facebook by searching Today's Eden Tribe or going to todayseden.com, and on the top menu bar you will see Today's Eden Tribe, and there you can click and join the group. The quote I'm leaving you with today is, "You owe yourself the love that you so freely give to other people." Thank you guys for listening, and I hope to see you in the group.